So today we have a guest on our podcast, which is Zoha from London. So welcome. Glad to have you. And I thought maybe you could start by introducing yourself.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Zoha. I'm running a Reiki studio in London. So I'm a Reiki healer. And that's actually how we met, right? You organized a spiritual talk online. And I joined, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. And we instantly connected. And it's so funny, like energy flows. It was from far away, but it felt so close. So, and we started our business at a similar time. So, we recognize a lot of parallels in your life and my life. So, I'm really glad that after some time, I just jumped into a train, came to get to know you and your business. In London, in my Reiki studio, I am also talking a lot to clients because I'm a psychologist as well. I use methods from nonviolent communication as well, so there's a variety where I really try to bring different areas together, right? Which is very useful. And today we're having a podcast, having some talks. And I was thinking we have three wonderful ladies here, and we had some talks about feminine and masculine energy and how this topic can be very boxed, and I was wondering what your take would be on this topic. What do you hear? What is it that you pick up? And yeah, and then we tune into the energy of it.
Yeah, and I love the topic. And first of all, it's something I find it's very important. It's very current in our society today. But also it's something that, when I started my spiritual journey, I had a lot of realizations about. And that is in the base. Of course, we talk a lot about masculine, feminine energies, and it's always very gender based.
Mm,
And the thing is, of course, we're women, we embody feminine energy, but we also have masculine energy. And for men,
absolutely.
they also have that. We all have both. And it's kind of one person has more of one as the other, sure. But I think when you think of the idea that at the core, all is one, and when you're into meditation and healing practices, you're able to connect to that core. And what that means is that the more we feel we can tap into that energy, the more connected we feel. That's my experience. But that also means that if you are everything, you are all those energies, the moment you turn against one of them, you turn against a part of yourself. And I think that's what creates a disconnect within
Yeah.
people. And that's the thing when we, as women, turn against the masculine, or when the masculine turns against the feminine, when men turn against women or women against men, there's a part of yourself that you're seeing as the other that you're not integrating.
Mm-hmm.
And that will always create a sense of loneliness and a sense of disconnect. And you'll never be able to really feel whole within yourself as long as you do that. And I really believe that the more we start to understand what those energies are and how we embody them and how we express them and how we let both of them be there at different times, the more we can really integrate all the parts of ourselves. For me, that's been a huge revelation. When I realized I started to do more spiritual practices, I realized there was a part of me that I was not freely, you know,
Yeah.
expressing. And it was a part of that was the feminine energy that when people hear that, it's like, what's the feminine energy? Get into that as well. It's, all the things that are connected to the intuitive, to the emotional, to, all the spiritual practices too. They are embodiment of the feminine energy. And in our society, we often look down on these things, right? It's kind of like if you're imagine in the corporate world or generally in society, by a large group of people, it's even subconsciously, it's kind of pushed away as less than, right? Because a lot of masculine traits are rewarded, a lot of feminine traits, what are seen to be feminine traits, they're not like emotions and stuff,
Absolutely.
and this is a huge issue for both men and women. So as women, we learn that part of you is like, don't be silly with your things. Like and that's why women often feel they're not good enough. They turn against each other because they themselves believe that that's true. And when it comes to men, they learn to suppress their emotions. Don't cry like a little girl. Don't be a princess. Don't all the stuff. But it's like if they would actually learn that that's also a part of them and that's also okay, and you can still be masculine and have emotions, you know,
Yeah.
then you would actually be a lot stronger, within yourself. And, for women, sometimes it's the same.
And what you're saying makes me think of something because what you said was disconnection, right? And I was thinking, additionally to the disconnection, there is this resistance, right? Because you have this core that knows. There's this wisdom that you cannot deny, even if we bury it in the subconscious mind. But there is an inner knowing that what the feminine is, what the masculine is. And that creates friction, that creates resistance. Because we grow up in societies where the feminine there's put, yeah, we have a lot of cliches around that. We have a lot of cliches around the masculine. And then we have this inner wisdom which does not match that. So there's resistance, and that's where the friction happens, right? And this friction, it creates irritation. And we know, okay, something is going wrong here, but what really is that? Because we hear cliches like what you mentioned, that the masculine is deemed to be not emotional. So we have the removal of emotions from the masculine, right? But it doesn't feel right. So we have the resistance again. With the feminine, we have equally cliches like it has to be soft, it has to be in the background, it has to be muted. But who says that any kind of energy is soft at all? It can be calm, but is that the same as soft?
That's funny because besides, you would deem it as soft, like even if you would say in a handling conflict, right? Like let's go all in the, in the violence can kind of take extremes, but it can also be assertiveness, which is maybe a good masculine trait, right? Assertiveness, and it can turn into violence when it turns toxic, but it's kind of like it can be a good thing in a conflict. Or you can take it the soft approach, which is like going into the emotions, stepping into the emotions, trying to solve it. People would deem that maybe as a soft skill, right? And regardless of how you box it or what you describe it as, the feminine energy, the energy of nature, is very like soothing, but it's also destructive.
Yes,
It's actually okay,
absolutely.
when nature's like everything's like it's regenerative as well. So it's like when everything goes to shit, it washes us all away, and it's the same with the state of the world. We can go to a certain amount of a certain point, and nature takes over, and we're all gone. And it's like that's the force of the feminine too. So it's both, and I think both energies have those two poles. So the feminine has, its divine expression, and it also has its dark expression, and it's not necessarily the destructive part, but I mean, yeah, wholesale other parts of it. And the same goes for the masculine energy. So it's just both of those energies can be used in a good way and in a not so great way when they're out of balance. And I think that's why us understanding more about these things within ourselves, first and foremost, because it's often projected out into the world, but it starts within, like learning to balance the masculine and feminine energy within ourselves. Yeah. Use both at the right times when it's, and we need both.
And it's again such an important piece. You're talking about balance. And when I work energetically with people, I notice that we often don't allow shifts because energies move. So our masculine, our feminine, it doesn't always stay the same. It's not stagnant. No. Right? But how do we allow this to take space? And one moment you're this and one moment you're that. There's not necessarily tolerance around this in our society.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I also think that for people that have not learned a lot about the feminine and the feminine and the male energy, that it can be very difficult to differentiate between the two. How do you know what is my feminine energy? What is my masculine energy? What is the definition of those kind of energies? Could also be that people have different definitions of it. When you're speaking to each other about these energies, but you have both have a different take on it, yeah, it can also cause friction.
Correct. What is very take on? What's your take on it, and what the difference is, and what the
It for me, if I had to describe the feminine and the male energy, the feminine for me would be change. Because others saying, yeah, and there would definitely be change. Because when I look at myself,
my emotions change quickly.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, look at our bodies every month. They go through change. So what?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, when I think of masculine, I think of like the masculine is the rock and the feminine is the ocean.
Yeah.
And that's how I see it.
Yeah.
But if I see that like the masculine in me is the part of me that can stay calm when things are like very hectic for me.
Yeah.
The calmness in me. It's the container. Yes, the container that lets the feminine energy can only fully flourish when she feels safe.
Yes.
And the masculine energy provides that safety. So it's the container for the creativity and the flow and the joy of the feminine, like the heart space, to fully be expressed. Because if you feel, I think all women deep down know this, and some are more aware of it than others. We have a really big need to feel safe all the time. It's like when you don't feel safe, you cannot fully be expressed. Yeah, and I think when women are in their full expressed energy, everybody benefits, including the masculine, because they need the other side of that their energy, and the feminine needs the masculine for that. So it's kind of like they work together in a really beautiful ways. And masculine's like the protection, the rock, the containment, as we said before, and all those things, but also the assertiveness, setting boundaries, all the things. And that's necessary for the feminine to, be in their flow. Because it's like with creativity. It's great to be creative, but it's also good to have a structure, but not a structure that sets everything and tries to control everything. And that's the opposite side of the masculine expressed in a more rigid form. Having some structure, while within that structure you can be creative. You think that's the balance.
The word protection and safety, that's an interesting one. And I find it very interesting in the discussion when we talk about the feminine and the masculine, right? Because that's where I see a lot of times we drift into cliches. Like the extreme is that men are, that's where we really get into gender, right? We don't talk about energies anymore. No, we talk about gender. So somebody that physically is manifested in a male body, that's the protector. And somebody who is manifested in a female body, she is the protected, right? And the way I feel it is we both, and by we, I mean the energies, the feminine and the masculine, they protect, but they protect different things.
Yeah.
Because the feminine protects often the spiritual connection, the emotional relevance. So oftentimes we find and I don't want to box anyone. There will always be a variety, but oftentimes I see that women make a house a home because they have that ability.
But that's the thing. The house is the structure, the container where they're in, and they give the heart.
Exactly.
They beautify it. They make it.
And they are protected when the atmosphere shifts. Oftentimes, I see the female energy coming forward and say, listen, the atmosphere isn't right. Let's do something about it. It also happens in relationships. Let's go to counseling. Let's fix this. Let's make this feel better.
And also but this you see in nature all the time as well. Like when the female, or for humans, the woman has children, she gets extremely protective. I mean, no mess with a woman whose children are at risk. That's like she goes to all extremes. So I mean, it's not to say it's men versus women. It's like that's the energy within us, and I think that's also for women. That's energy. Anything that's something that I realize. It's like there was a part of me, my inner masculine, was overprotecting my inner feminine, my inner feminine, And when I have that's happening within myself, I cannot fully be balanced, and it has nothing to do with what's going on in the outside world so much. It's something within me. I need to learn to feel that safety in my system, and it's all about nervous system regulation. Like, where do those things come from? How did it come to be? And then you start working with your embodiment, the safety nervous system. And, it's literally trying to get the energy grounded so your base is okay. And then you can open up, and then you can open up the third eye. It's like I used to, when I started meditating, at some point, I used to work with opening my third eye chakra a lot. I remember I wasn't doing enough grounding. And it started to be very, like, not good. I started to see, like, colors and start to and I was like, "Oh, this is not." I felt it. I was like, "Okay, I need to do more grounding."
Yeah.
Because your base needs to be good. And from that base, you can open up, you can, you know,
We even not the balance.
I was like, you need to be grounded because you're both here in the physical realm
Yeah.
and in the spiritual realm, but we cannot do one or the other without losing our mind, you know?
Mm.
Losing the mind's maybe a weird, funny analogy.
No, but I don't know, like, you mean, if you're only grounded, you're not open to intuition. And if you're only into the intuition, you're not, you're like, here, yeah, no, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And that's the play between the energy centers. When you said, when you were mentioning this before, I was thinking of the root chakra, and it's a typical say chakra theme, right? I was talking about safety, security, belonging, right? And we all have a root chakra. It doesn't matter if you are leaning towards feminine energy or leaning towards masculine energy, right? We all have this need of safety and feeling safe, feeling belonging. It just makes us feel like we're cozy in a sort of shelter or and it's interesting to observe how both of these energies can provide that sensation, but it's in different areas. So when I often observe parents, and oftentimes the mother is protecting the baby, and like literally the child placing itself on the heart of their mother,
Mhm.
and the mother really creates this shelter for the child. But often the father creates the shelter for both of
For
them,
both of them, yeah.
right?
Yes.
So it's really both provide protection, but it's different areas, and one is not less than the other. And where I get a little bit uh irritated, it's when we draw a picture of the female equal women are weak. That's not what it is, because women can be incredibly powerful, and the female energy can be very chaotic, because from chaos we birth, and the feminine brings fertile energy. It just does. It births. We're literal creators. Yes, are into.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it is powerful. It is very fierce, but and that's where I have to think about what you said. We are cyclic beings. Yeah. There are changes. There are changes of season, changes of how do I feel today? How do I feel tomorrow? While the masculine, I experience this as constant. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's the difference that I sense energetically. And funny enough, in terms of gender, when I work with people, I feel the most balanced between female and masculine energy. It's those men who embrace their feminine part, and it's those women who allow themselves to be fierce, to be taking up space and being present.
And what both of them have is good emotional regulation.
Yes.
Both of them. Yeah, because a man that doesn't have good emotional regulation or a woman that doesn't have good
Yep.
emotional regulation is not gonna feel balance in that sense, or like meet their opposite gender if that's what you're interested in, or not, right? Or just your match. You know, you're gonna attract what you are, right? So it's like if you're unbalanced in some way, you will attract the opposite because that partner will show you exactly where your issues are. Yeah, until you start to do something about it, and the same goes with the opposite person. So it's just this kind of funny patterns that we get caught up in.
Yeah.
And then we need to learn nonviolent communication and get ourselves out of it. Exactly. I'm so glad I have you guys to, help me. Yeah.
Can I ask just one question about I would like to know what your take is from it's a buzzword. It's used a lot online. What do you think of toxic masculinity? Yeah, masculine energy, but like um exaggerated. If we could express anger, if that could be like a masculine energy, there's nothing wrong with expressing anger. But if you're violent, literally violent, then that is an extreme version of the masculine energy. So I would call it an extreme version of a masculine energy. I would call that toxic. But yeah, like a distorted
Yeah.
way to express that energy, right? Exactly. Yeah. And I see that, unless I don't want to interrupt your
Oh,
thought.
it's just yours.
So my thoughts are that it's almost like masculinity was infiltrated. There's nothing toxic about masculine energy, like itself. It's just not toxic. It's masculine energy.
Yeah.
And we technically all contain that energy, just in different shades, and we lean to one or the other. And but humans used maybe culture, politics to infiltrate that energy. And things were linked to that energy that are not necessarily natural to that energy. Why would we use violence to infiltrate that energy and say, oh, yeah, the masculine, it has to be aggressive, it has to be violent, it has to submit the other energies?
Yeah, because I think what Faye said, it's like an extreme of the energy, you know? It's like when we talk about emotional regulation,
Yeah.
it's kind of you find sort of finding your center. We all have that work to do, right? In our ways. And I think when you start to pull a masculine energy to the extreme, it becomes like controlling. So it's kind of about assertiveness, setting boundaries, protectiveness. That's really beautiful traits of the masculine, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a man is like self-regulated and he has all these things? You're like, great, the feminine is drawn towards that. But when it goes toxic, is when there is no balancing and he's disconnected from the other part of himself, which is that part, smaller part maybe of feminine energy, which is the emotional. So it's a man that is very much like, I want to be more masculine, but I don't have emotional self-regulation. I'm going to try to find control because we're all in a freaking chaotic world and we're trying to figure out a way to live. For the masculine in that expression, it can become, I need to control my surroundings. I need to suppress. I need to, the women in my life to maybe submit to me, or they need to, because they feel that's powerful. But what they don't realize, in my opinion, is that that part within themselves that's not seeing their own emotions because, they don't have one, but they're super angry. And that's a huge expression of emotion, right?
Yeah.
When they say women are so emotional, unregulated men are extremely emotional. They express a lot of anger. Secondary emotion, which is at the core, is a deep sadness, right? A deep sense of loneliness. And I often feel, I recently saw this documentary about, this toxic masculinity, or one of them. What I found really interesting was, I didn't find anything surprising at all. But what I found interesting is that an interviewer would just ask to one of the men, like, I'm just curious about your relationship. Well, that was the question. If someone would ask you the question and you feel grounded within yourself and you're happy with what you're doing, the energy you exude is like, this is how it is and this is what it's for me. Great, great. That's emotion regulations, whatever the answer would be, right? Because everyone has different preferences, great.
Yeah.
But you could just sense very deeply, and I think we could all immediately pick that out. I think most women can, because most men too, by the way. I think probably if they're connected to the heart space a little bit. Um, that they were just not centered within themselves with their answer. They're ashamed of their own answers. They're deflecting what they're saying. They're instantly, it's like, why? Why in a moment like that, someone asks you a question about yourself, an open question, why would you feel the need to feel embarrassed? Why would you feel the need to deflect? Why would you feel the need to attack? Why? If you're centered within yourself, there's no need for that. And yes, every time I say that's not,
Mm.
it's the energy is here. Yeah, it's not here. He's saying.
Which is natural if every question is about power for you. This brings tension. If you are driven to a mindset, you constantly have to be in power. That's also an exaggeration of solar plexus energy, right? You're not always dominant here. You have to have the balance in all your energy centers.
Because I think every life, all relationships in some way are about that, But it's not power in the sense what we in a masculine world think what power is. It's like, I'm throwing more bombs, I'm in power. It's like, no, the power is within you. It's like, how centered are you? Where's the power within your energetic system? Yeah, it's a different idea of power. But that's real power, Not when you know, someone's dysregulated, someone throws a lot of things at your ego gets shattered, so you feel shattered. That's not power. That's your ego taking over, You're not connected to your center. So I think that's also the distorted idea of power that we have, That that type of masculine energy is power, but it's not. Not only it's a different type. It's hate is very powerful. It's funny when we say that there's an ambulance coming by. So the violent expression of power is like it leads to all these ambulances and wounded people and more hurt. It's like it's like, and it's the thing. Assertiveness is a form of power, but when you pull it to the other direction, it's kind of becomes that's like the thing. Love is very powerful. Hate is also very powerful. But it's just what do you feel within yourself is an expression of your own emotions. If someone's very happy, they wouldn't walk down the street and call out a hateful comment to someone. Why would you do that? It just says something about their internal state.
I always say if you truly feel powerful, that's actually very calm.
Yeah.
It's very far away from being aggressive or trying to submit somebody else. It's far away from force because when you feel powerful, you also don't feel the need to prove it.
No.
And you just are.
Yeah.
It's really deep down.
Yeah.
And because it's deep down, it also creates deep confidence instead of the superficial, ego driven confidence that is constantly like being the dick in the streets and being a rude, aggressive person to the cashier.
Yeah, the jealous person. Yeah, especially amongst women, can be very jealous. Just basically, they're just insecure about something and want to feel better about something, and then you put the other woman down so you feel better about yourself. Because I used to, I did that as well when I was young. But only because I wanted to feel better about myself. I didn't mean to be nasty towards the other person. It was just I was so insecure. I didn't know that then. It was so insecure, and then I would like say something that wasn't very nice, and then hopefully that person that I would say that to would then like me. Yeah, it was all about, oh, I hope they like me. Yeah, and I mean, that's we're all human, right? Unless there's some kind of a complete, psychopath, everybody has that need to belong and to be liked, to be seen. That's a human emotion. So that's normal, and it's kind of. But sometimes feel as women, we're taught too much, like, oh, you have to be nice, you have to be always be liked and stuff. But that's the thing, it's kind of if someone doesn't, you don't have to over explain everything. It's kind of like if someone doesn't see something, you can choose to talk about it. But it's like sometimes we feel the need too much to over explain and try to, it's like someone's already made up their mind most of the time. So unless someone's open as a question, you can explain it, right? But otherwise, it's like just have to learn to let that go and support each other, right? Not turn against each other. So I think that's what we've learned as women to like turn against each other. That's what that's what makes the feminine weaker because we thrive in community. We thrive in that course. We're each other's container. And because for women physically, it would be more unsafe on a physical level because, we're smaller. We need that even more. Yeah. So I think that's where we can all find that power back by, connecting.
It makes me think of our conversation yesterday. We were talking about competition, right? Oftentimes I get into situations where people perceive me as very powerful. I have a lot of power. That's just the thing. When you work with the energies, you gain power. That's great. You feel empowered, right? And for me, it feels great. Sometimes, especially what you said, when you encounter insecure people, friction happens, right? I'm easily the one that triggers people. But I told you yesterday that I run into people that get into competition with me. I never asked to be in a competition, but they create a competition. I don't do competition. I always say, let's win together.
Yeah.
And that's where we had a lot of agreement yesterday. And but they get into competition, and that's where you said it's because of a mindset that is around scarcity. There's one winner, one winner. It cannot be like we win as a
And
team.
that's what you see in the world right now. Everything's a zero-sum game. We're like, we win over them and we're gonna be it's like that's that extreme trait of where the masculine when it can lead to violence, when it's no balance because we're disconnected from that other
Yes.
it becomes that. And it's like, and sometimes competition can be good in a fun way, right? When you can like, oh, it can be. But it's like when it's drawn into that, it becomes a zero-sum game. And it means kind of like, okay, when you have a client, then I don't. It's like, no, we can all have clients. We can work together. I think if you're in community, if one person wins, grows, we all benefit from that. And I think that's really possible by working together. Everybody grows, Why not? And it's just that, yeah.
It starts with taking accountability for what is yours. And you said something so important. Some we all carry certain insecurities. Yeah. And I think you said when you were younger, you had certain insecurities and that led to jealousy. And I assume that you gained awareness over these insecurities. So that's the first step. Okay, what is my insecurity? And then owning it, saying, this is my insecurity. When I go into competition with another woman, that is me feeling, oh, I have to prove now that I'm not subordinate to this woman. So I'm getting into competition. It comes from insecurity. Yeah. But if we don't own it, and this is something that I really love in nonviolent communication, it sorts out accountability. Yes. You own what you feel, you own what you need, and the model really sorts it out. Okay, what are our feelings? What are our needs? Yes. And how can we then communicate what we want in an appropriate way? Yeah. Because, truth be told, a lot of times, even when we have that awareness, when we ask for something, it's not necessarily automatically in a non-violent way. Because a lot of times people ask for things and they already assume that you will say yes.
Or it's a demand. And I think they ask, but it's a demand.
Yes.
And then when the other person hears a demand, big chance that they will go into the resistance.
Yes.
But so it's like, it sounds when you explain it, it sounds very like, he's seeing it like, okay, great. As I learned a lot from Faye and I know we talked about it too. And I'm like, all the things that you could do wrong, I've been doing wrong. All of them. Well, I say it, but yes, doing that. Yeah, it's like all of it. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, wait, just by making it shit or practicing it every time. Okay, wait.
But I wouldn't call it wrong. It's just you haven't learned another way.
True. Actually, that's true. Because both, yeah, true. Because the opposite way of finding communication, we can always say it's bad, but it has benefits too, and that's the reason people do it, right? People don't do things that don't benefit them. So every behavior has a benefit. Because sometimes we say it's bad. No, you do things because you've learned that it's getting you somewhere. It's been a protective mechanism. Plus, there's a reason you learn certain behaviors. Yeah, but there's good things about it. You set your boundaries very well, but it can also cause disconnect if you don't. And that's the thing. Is like, what do you want? Yeah, it's optimized for.
As a child, you can create certain coping mechanisms which really work well when you were that child.
Yeah. Yes.
But then you take them with you into adult life, and then you find that it doesn't work for you anymore. At first, you don't know why something's not working. And then when you realize, oh, this is a coping mechanism I created when I was really young, and then to be aware of that and then be able to break through it.
Yeah.
Like I was taught to don't have conversations about politics or try not to get into arguments with people. Just just be okay. Don't get into arguments. Which then I did not give my opinion about things. So I could be in a group of people not agreeing with what's going on and wouldn't dare to say it.
Right.
Did you be told to dim your light, right? All the time. And it's always kind of like, oh, you're too much, quiet down, like, just be nice, like all the things. But it's kind of, as women, I think a lot of people in society they get triggered by a woman doing that, where you're actually speaking up and say, hey, I don't agree with this.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, she's hysterical. It's like, no, she just says she doesn't agree with it and she shouldn't agree with it. She's not right. And it's kind of like we should just learn to be like more like, and enough. I can just say I want, and that's how I feel it, in a non-violent way. And I think yeah, it's the key to most.
Yeah. Just want to mention because I don't want to put my parents or my dad or my mom in like a bad daylight. I mean, that also came from a place of protectiveness. I mean, my dad grew up in a place where things were quite rough, and you didn't want to if you were not with the group, then you were bullied. That's the way it was. So he just wanted me to fit into the group so I wouldn't get bullied. So I completely understand that our parents come from a place of protection. They teach us things to protect us, which doesn't necessarily work for us when we're adults, but it all comes from a place of everybody. I believe that everybody does the best they can with what they know at that time. So it's not blame or
you can see it probably worked in that scenario, right? If a kid's like being bullied, it's like it's good to have those. Yeah, you need that in that moment. It doesn't mean the rest of your life it's always the best, but you need more of those skills in that situation because to protect yourself. So it's understandable. But then when you take it with you, it becomes a thing later on. I think we all have that in life, right? We all learn stuff through our conditioning or upbringing. Then we have to sort of unlearn it at some point. And in midlife, we're kind of like, okay, let's hopefully
Yeah. And that's also
start differently.
the limiting beliefs then get created too.
Yeah.
I mean, do you do? I'm just curious to find out. Do you still both have certain limited beliefs that you are now aware of and still trying to break through?
Too many. How long have we got? Awareness. So awareness is a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
So you kind of raise your consciousness and you get aware of a lot of things, but it also unfolds a lot. So limiting beliefs is a big area, but I don't know where to start and where to. I take it day by day and I work my way through it, but it's more like a forest. And I take a walk in this forest, and one day it's this tree, one day it's that tree. And the limiting beliefs in nonviolent communication, Marshall B. Rosenberg actually has an exercise which is so wonderful. He describes these as guardians. And in this exercise, you can really work through the limiting belief and understand that this limiting belief is protecting you from something. And when you get in touch with, and a lot of this is in the subconscious mind, but this exercise helps to bring this up into the conscious mind. And you communicate with the limiting belief and you understand, oh my God, it really protected me from something.
Yeah.
Once in one of these groups, when I was still doing my training program, I was working through the limiting belief. I had that thought, I am not lovable. And that's really, it's painful. It's very, you feel the pain and so, and it was a tough topic. And now I can totally talk about it. At that time, I found it emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And in that group, we talked about it, and I understood what this thought, and it was almost intrusive, but this thought protected me from certain things. And that comes in layers. So working through those layers then helps to unemploy the guardian. So that's how you can lose a limiting belief. And that is why when working with people, they often come in, I want to love myself more. Well, a big part of it is limiting beliefs, right? It's a long way to get there, to clear the stage and then be able to really full on love yourself. I think a lot of times we really underestimate how much is behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. What need is not being met?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like for you, Faye, the question you asked.
With the limiting beliefs, oh, like you said, I still have many limiting beliefs. I'm just more aware of them now. So then it gets a bit easier to break through them, of course, when you're aware of them. I mean, this whole process with you, Linda, that we're trying to build this business and that we keep running into things and making notice that some of them are limiting beliefs that are stopping us.
Yeah.
We are aware of them, but we are continuing doing what we're doing. We're not letting it stop us anymore. But that doesn't mean it doesn't feel awkward.
Yeah, true.
Or sometimes that I would hope my boss is gonna give up, which I know I'm not. But
Yeah. I think it's kind of funny because when I think when you want to grow and do stuff, you have to go through your discomfort at times, but also in a way that feels good to the body. And of course, when you're going in this uncomfortable situation, the body reacts. So you go into a state of anxiety, right? Start to keep you safe, like don't do that, you're gonna die. You're kind of like, okay, I might die, but do I still want to do it? Still want to do it. Okay, I'm still gonna do it. And then you do a small thing, and then you're like, did die. Yep, okay, did die. It feel like, okay. And then sometimes all the emotions, anxiety from the past, everything comes up. You just need a good practice to regulate yourself. Because I think if I wouldn't have these practices, I probably wouldn't be doing all the stuff I'm doing. Because but really, I need that sometimes. I'm on a high and it feels just well. Sometimes I'm on a low and then all the stuff from the past, everything comes up. And then I need to really take the time to do my Reiki, to do my meditation, to really kind of regulate myself again. And then I come from a place of, okay, feeling steady, then I get back into it. without when I'm in the chaotic state and I'm like, like when you're trying to create something. Because I always hear the advice, just gotta keep going. It's like, yeah, sure, in a way, there's some truth to that, but also you don't want to create stuff from a chaotic, dysregulated place. It's not you're closing the creative channel. You start to
Yeah.
create from your head,
Yeah.
but that disconnects you from the creative flow because creative flow is feminine energy, the intuitive energy that you open up to some unseen thing that just flows through you and it just happens. You're creating stuff. But when it's from the head too much, it's not from the heart space, So it's kind of like, and it's handy from the head because I believe you need to first feel into the heart. What is it that I love to do? And then the head fills in the rest and tries to like think of the strategy and the ways to do that, the ways to get there in this world.
And ideally,
Makes it at first.
ideally we are in that space. And I notice, I mean, for myself, with all the political situation, I notice, oh my God, my nervous system, ooh, it's not always ideal. And I agree with everything that you said. I think if you are not in that state, the most important thing is to be authentic about it and honest about it. Because sometimes you are not regulated. Sometimes you will have issues to sleep, and it can be so many different reasons. I remember a friend of mine. She just had a baby. It was chaos for her. Right. It doesn't mean that she stopped doing her business. She stopped creating. She didn't, because she didn't want to compromise in that way. And for myself right now, with everything going on globally, I do realize, okay, I need to put extra resources into myself to keep a sort of balance. We don't always get it right. That just happens. But this is also something that I emphasize. We're not here to be perfect.
It's funny you said with this, sorry to interrupt you, we go back to this in a second, but it's like the fact of like we're not balanced. I think we're never 100% balanced because I think our world, we're in the source, all is one. Everything's like stagnant, still energy in a way, like still. It's like and so, but it's like the polarities make it like go up and down. So it's kind of we're never in a perfect balance. That's why we're here living the way we do.
Yeah.
But it's kind of yeah. But you were talking about the feeling dysregulated because of all the things that are going on in the world. Yes, also thinking what might be interesting is how do you how do you how do you choose where you put your focus? Because of course, the more you focus on the hard stuff, the more it starts to become a part of your energy, your being. But at the same time, we want to try to be in a good energy because that's what we exude, what we pass on. But at the same time, we don't want to look away for the things that are not right, especially if you feel it affects your whole country or your family and stuff. So how do you see that?
So important, this question. And I always emphasize that we have two aspects. One is our spirit. We are a spirit, and we came here in the human form to experience a human life. So we have spirit and life, human life. Both is important. A lot of people, they escape into spirituality, and that's when we have spiritual bypassing. And a lot of people, they're too deep into earthly matters. It's all about balance, and it's all about choice. You can escape into spirituality if you want to. I'm the last person to judge that, but I am also not trying to tell you there is a balance with you. I will be the one that says, yeah, you lean towards this. For myself, I know I want both. I don't want to compromise. And not acting like I'm just spirit. So I'm not being the person that says, I am a goddess and I can do anything. I will manifest anything. No, 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 no. I want the abundance that human life brings. And human life, a lot of people think human life brings a lot of limitations and scarcity. That's not true. It brings abundance in a different shape. You have abundance of suffering, for example. I understand that this sounds brutal, but the more you tune into your spirit, the more you will understand it was one of the things you signed up for. I have chronic conditions that put me into pain all the time. And I understood there is a reason why I signed up for this, but it took me a long time to get there, and I would never force anyone to see it that way. I think this should come organically. But with those political things, with those, I do get into this because my choice was I don't want to be so far away from what is happening on earth and be like, oh yeah, so as a spiritual guru, what I see is ascension here and blah blah blah. I don't want to be that. I want to be the Iranian. I came to this world intentionally. I was born as an Iranian woman with certain beliefs, with a mission, yeah, that I chose, and that I'm exercising. It doesn't mean that sometimes I do not get lost in it, but I notice it. I notice, okay, I got too deep into this. And I told you a few days ago that I got into situations. I was sucked into discussions that were way deep into darkness and into, so I lost track of why I am speaking out on political topics, for example, right? And then I had to back up and I had to connect to my spirit and be like, hey, what was my mission? What did I choose? And I noticed I lean towards the light. I want to help to get there. That's why I do my energetic work. But that's why I also talk about politics, right? I think both leads us there. But that's why I had to pull myself out of those discussions. I had to distance myself from certain insults and accusations because that's not why I'm here. I'm not here for people to come and abuse me. I'm not here to go into a victim mode. I'm here to help lead into the light. And this can have many shapes and forms. You don't have to be politically active, but that is my choice. I chose to do that. And that serves me in both ways, my spirit and my desire to experience human life with all its bullshit, with all its suffering and pain. And because that's beautiful, when I go back to the spiritual realm, I won't have that.
No.
There's a reason why I'm here, and I won't ignore this. Does that make sense?
Does make sense. Does that make sense? I think it's kind of, if you feel I have a purpose or there's something I feel internally I need to do, it's never the things that are super easy because then everyone would do it, right? It's always the stuff like you feel like I need to say this because I find this is important, and then everyone's gonna throw a bunch of shit at you, and hey, and you said, are you still gonna do it?
Yes.
And when you get to the point that you're like, yes, I am, and I'm still centered in myself, then you're finding your strength and your real freedom in the end, I believe.
Yes.
But it's kind of, you need good processes and, self-regulation. And I think
Yes.
what you said before, like it's something you need to practice all the time, right? You need to do it every day, basically. What's it like for you, Faye?
Um, doing like voicing something or
Maybe, but yeah, I think the initial question was about like the balance between how much should we focus on being in our good energy and trying not to focus on negativity because you don't want if you focus on it, it starts to become you basically.
yeah.
Versus there is a lot of negativity. To what amount should I focus on it? Or when it's politically something's happening, you can't look away from like how do you see that balance and how we should approach that?
I was just saying to you that for me, like I don't watch the news anymore because I don't know if it's actually true, and it really influences me when I see certain things, when I hear certain things. It can be I can get worried or I lose sleep over it. So I decided I do not want to know anymore. And like I said to you, I'd rather be not informed than misinformed. But I do not judge anybody that does watch the news and gets into it, or so it's just for me, if I want to feel, I want to stay close to who I am, what feels good to me. And if all that negativity, for me, news is negativity. So for me, I choose not to get engaged or watch it, or which also means that a lot of the time when people talk about political things, I don't know what they're talking about. But I'm okay with not knowing what they're talking about.
Yes.
So for me, that feels fine. And like you, I don't judge others that do get into it. So I think the balance for me is just to stay in contact with what am I feeling, what effect does this have on me, and is this working for me or not?
Right.
And there's a difference for me between, oh, this makes me awkward, but I'm going to go through it anyway because I know in the end that will bring me something better, or this is just a big no for me because it's doing something to my nervous system.
I think it's also because you're very aware of what your purpose is and why you're here and what you want to contribute and what you feel that you're here to contribute. I think it's the same for you, by the way. But it's like it's just feeling into that, right? And it's different for everyone. And it's funny because there's so much shit going on in the world, right? One person gets this enraged about one of the wars, another person about the other thing, another person about another political topic. We all have, for some reason, have a certain connection to a certain thing going on, and it's different for everyone. And you cannot be fully invested in all of it because it's too much. We cannot process that amount of information. So it's like one person feels it with this thing, one person feels it with that thing. So it's also very interesting to feel what is going on here and why do I feel this way, and then following what you feel is your why you're here. So for you, the stuff that's happening, you're like, I have, your family is there, it affects you directly, and it's not right. You have that connection, you're like, I feel like I need to speak out. And I think it's probably part of your journey why you're here. It's like to learn to do that and just be free in your strength, in your power, and speak out, And for us, it could be for you, sorry, it could maybe also be a similar thing done in a different way,
Yeah.
And it's just feeling into what it is for you and then being okay with that and then saying, how can I be in my best self for me living at purpose?
Yeah.
For some, it's I need to be connected, I need to be aware, I need to notice this because it's part of what I'm talking about. And maybe it can be a choice to not do that, but I think it's really important to feel, what am I trying to do here?
Yeah.
And then optimize yourself for that in this world, because I can, just so many things I can get, worried about, but I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this really pisses me off and it's not right. Am I going to, do I feel the call to do something about it? It's like, and if I do, in what way? And if I don't feel the call to do something about it, then what's the point? Keep watching it because it's just making me and everybody around me sad because I'm angry, I'm in a bad mood. So it's like, okay, so if that's not the case, what can I do about it in my surroundings? Happy, even if it's something small, try to switch it to, you feel powerless, you feel scared watching this stuff or hearing this stuff or the things you worry about, to what can I contribute? And I think if everybody does that, it would change a lot. But you need to regulate your nervous system, step out of your fear, and try to find a balance between, no matter what your choice is.
And I think it's such a shame that there is a lot of judgment placed, like as if in theory there is right and wrong exist, and they don't. They
No.
seriously don't. Spiritually, there is no wrong or right.
From my perspective, if there's a source and everything's one,
Humans make things. We've decided what is wrong and what is right. Yeah, there is no right.
Everybody has a different definition for it. Yeah. And then when it comes to power games, people tell each other, you have to do this because that's the right thing to do. But spiritually, spirit loves everyone. It is literally our birthright. You could be a serial killer, you're still spiritually loved. And that is what I think a lot of people have trouble to wrap their head around, that whatever you want to manifest into your life, even if it looks evil in human words, they can experience this. This is what Earth is about. That's the abundance of it. There is an abundance of experience. Whatever program you want to load, you can play that game. But the question is, what do you want to be?
But it's yeah, exactly. You constantly because that's the thing also with good and bad. It's like we sometimes say, oh, the evil is outside of ourselves.
Yes.
So every time you're like getting a temptation, you're getting that voice like, you should just go with the easy way out. You should just go, drink, eat, whatever, all the names. It's like, well, it's a consistent like battle within of what choice are you going to make, And I think everybody has that, and I think everybody intrinsically know, is this love or is it not? I think we all know that. But I know where you're coming from, by the way, that from a spiritual perspective, at the core, that's the case. But it's maybe interesting to, because I can imagine someone watching and thinking like, what's happening in around the regime? It's clearly like, it's what they're doing is pretty evil, right? I mean, and a lot of other things too.
Our Earth experience,
It is, you're like, yeah, you feel like as a human, you need to speak out against it because it's not right. But from another level, you feel every soul is here for an experience and we're all karmically connected.
Let me give you a different example to clarify what I mean by that. Because it's not supposed to sound like I don't feel the brutality of this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not distancing myself from the pain that it causes. But I'll give you the example of my own father. And I chewed into this in many shades and really deep. So for my own experience, it really gave me a spiritual perspective on this. My father is textbook abuser, like he is the perfect villain, right? And I came to this point to really connect to his spirit, and I don't know what it is. We have a spiritual connection where it is kind of easy for me to connect to that. But I got to the point where I really could feel that, and I had this experience in very specific situations where he did something really, really horrible. And then there was the question, what do I do now? And that is what this was about for me. Because he was such an asshole, I was able to live out fully who I am. And this really showed me my noble core. He did all sorts of things, right? So, one situation I can remember, it was about finances, and he got to my money, right? And it was in a situation where I was still a minor. So technically, he was responsible for me. And it was in a situation where I really needed money to make a living. I had to live for myself. So anyway, he didn't care. He got to my money. But because he was like that, I was forced to stand up for myself, to speak out. And that experience was very liberating. It told me a lot about myself. And I got to the experience my spirit desired to experience itself. That is the meaning of life for me. And he was the perfect surfboard. I jumped onto the surfboard to experience the wave of confidence, of knowing who I am. Because of him, I know you cannot buy me. I just know because I already went through that experience. And that is why, even though that was painful, really, really painful, and I'm still not in contact with him. I'm not in touch with him. I'm very aware of what kind of person he is. But I am grateful that I had that villain so that I could be the hero. And I don't say that in an egotistical way. I'm saying this as I'm so grateful about this. And that is one of the core things that I experienced that make me want to be a healer, right? So at the end, I'm not saying that evil is not evil. I'm saying the evil is here for a reason. And if we can find a way to understand, and when you look at Iran, the way I feel pride for my people, it's beyond measure. The way they show courage, the way they show bravery. Does that mean that I wish this evil upon them? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I wish for them to be free. I cannot believe we're already going through this half a century, right? But I cannot deny that what they show is such pure spirituality. It's so pure of light, and I can feel that. And that is something that I acknowledge and I have gratitude for that. And I know this is going to come to victory. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to look at this side of this as well. Doesn't mean that I wish that upon people, but I will say it does have that effect.
But it's like that terrible pain and all the suppression that's going on there. It brings out that fire in people because it come at the point. They get to the point like I've got nothing to lose.
Yes.
And they're like, which is in a way, it's like sad, it's coming to the point, but at the same time, you see the incredible strength.
And you go shred or push to that point. And so I'm curious because as like a psychiatrist, but also an energetic healer, yeah, very curious to find out. Because like with you, you went through a painful situation with your father to pay the very least.
Yes.
And you managed to find the gift in it, like you say, as my confidence of finding out who I am. How would you help people who go through terrible experience, like maybe they're in the middle of a war, bombs are dropping everywhere, they're civilians. How do you help them to find the gift in that? Because I can imagine those people thinking, oh my God, what do they mean finding a gift? Look at what's going on. That's what you know, isn't it?
That's a really good question. And the simple answer is I don't. I do not believe in forcing people to try to see the positive in the negative, because that is something very toxic that I observe a lot of times. And I experienced it even in counseling. So, a young girl, I used to be a youth welfare worker, a family support worker. Young girl comes in and came into counseling, and it wasn't a horrible situation about this assault and within the family. And the counselor tried to take the positive from it and said, well, at least the assault is in the past. Well, that's not the reality of that girl.
No.
She is reliving this all over again and again and again, with flashbacks and full blown symptoms, right? Our job is not to force anyone to any insights. No, it has to come organically. I know my journey was very, very long. It took me a long time. And that is how it has to come. It is a side effect of healing. It's not, don't see it as a goal. Don't see it as an aim. Never force it. If somebody wants to curse their abuser, let them. Yeah. Because they're entitled to. And the situation, the situation with bombs falling and all of this, you now see people being in two extremes. One extreme is the extreme worry and concerns about their loved ones. And then you see them celebrating and dancing when another leader of the IRGC is being taken out. Look at the celebrations when Khamenei was killed, right? And you have these very extremes, and it is due to the extreme situation, right? And I think when people have the desire even to celebrate, when this evil person, the villain, is being wiped out, that is fair. I'm not going to go in and say, yeah, but this villain actually helped you. See the positive. I think that's very toxic. Yeah, we really have to back up and allow people to be human. We all have flaws. And I think in a lot of ways it's ego driven, where we think, again, there is a right and there is a wrong. There's no such thing. No. There is something that is right for you. You need to help somebody to find out what is right for you. Is it right for you to get lost and drown in your worries? What is right for you? Or can we find a way for you to have faith and to truly believe that this incredible courage of your people will win? Is that maybe the energy you want to lean towards? But it's like a buffet. Offer. Yeah, look, these are different options. Which one would you like to pick? The job of counselors, healers, helpers in any shape and form is not to make the pick for people.
No.
It's for you to show what they can pick. Yeah. And give them the freedom. Okay, what would you like?
And help them reconnect to that essence
Yes.
in themselves, to feel that. Because I think so often we're, when we are in our minds and we're like in the world, we're so disconnected from that. We don't learn to connect to it, right? It's like when I had my awakening, I always call it, which always comes, by the way, when I feel people awaken and they had this sudden connection to that core. It comes from going through a lot of pain, because pain shoots you down and then you go up, right? So it's also something you cannot awaken in someone. Someone has to be ready on a soul level to go there.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's actually why there's many stories where people go through the most awful situations, like the book The Gift, for example, by Edith, I don't know her last name. She was in a concentration camp. She had an awakening. And she writes in her book, I never felt so free.
Yeah.
Because something within her but went there. And when you're like from an outside perspective and you have not connected to that part, you're going to read it and like,
Yeah.
it's not going to make sense, because from the mind, that doesn't make sense. And it's also something the mind cannot understand that. where the mind is designed for a 3D reality, which is the tangible world we live in with the good and the evil and all the things. But the core beneath that, the other dimensions, it's something that your mind is not designed to understand. So you can never, through the mind, you can try to create more opening to get there through the mind by understanding it and trying to, be aware of your thoughts and open yourself up to the possibilities through changing your thoughts. But you have to connect to that on a heart, from the heart space to on another level. That's why so often, you know, people in an analytical world are like, this is how it is. And then people say with trauma work, somewhere in the body is where your trauma is stored. Well, we're all healers. That's what we feel. And people are like, well, how do you know? You can't know that. It's like, you can know that, but not from the mind. And that's what the mind doesn't understand. So it's always, helping people to connect to that core, to that inner light. And from there you can start, I think. I think that's why we're here.
Yeah.
And so also, I mean to say we're all here. I think every person is here to on the most basic level. When you talk about purpose, the core of each person is to learn to find that light, to live from a place of love more, and that's what we're all here to figure out in some way. And then on top of that, there's the karmic purpose, the karmic knots, and then our life purpose. What's the outer expression of our purpose? But at the core, yes, it's connecting to that, I believe.
Yeah, and it's not one size fits all. The way you find the light can be completely different in the way I find it. And it's not up to me to say to you, this is the way I find it, so you have to do it that way as well, because this is the one way that works. It's not like that.
And that's so important because a lot of people would judge someone like my father as not enlightened. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah.
I think he is a soul that volunteered. I experienced that, how we made an agreement. I told him, listen, I want to get into this experience. Can you get me there? You have to push me. You have to, like, when we are playing this out, I need you to get me to the edge, right? Because in my other incarnations, I didn't get there. And he said, you know what? I will play the best fucking villain you've ever seen. And he did that. You cannot simply say, I'm not saying that everybody is that way. I'm not saying that the dictator and the new junior dictator of Iran, they are doing this and they made that agreement. I'm saying this applies to my father. And this is how I experienced it, bringing more shades to the discussion because it's not always the one thing that you think it is.
No, but it's a different way of viewing the world, right? Because if you've connected to that essence and you've had experiences where you realize, wait, the soul is still here. I have all these but I'm not. When you die, you don't stop. The soul doesn't stop living, and you've lived before. And it's these things to someone living in a mind. Yeah, we all were at one point. It doesn't compute, because people are like, what are you doing? But you can't try to describe those experiences, but it's something you have to feel. And it's the thing, it's a different way of seeing the world. That's why I think awakening is such a big thing for the soul to do. The whole way you see the world shifts completely. So it's a thing that means you have to let go of your old identity. And when you're not ready to do that, your soul's not going to make that choice right now because you're not ready to let go of all that. It comes with a lot of pain too. Letting go of your old identity. There's a lot of change that comes from that. And I think often people subconsciously hold on to their comfort zone, their old life, because they're like, if I move away from that, even though part of me feels I want to, or that's right, it's too painful. So I'm not ready. And that's why you cannot decide when someone's ready or not. It has to come.
Yeah.
And as healers, we're not healing someone. Like we talked about,
Yes.
we're the bridge, right? Yeah. And a healer is the bridge between the unseen world and the tangible world. And it's up to the person where they're at and how open they are to go there to receive it, what they're ready for in that moment. And it cannot be forced. That's the thing. It's a very powerful thing, but it has to be received. And that's the feminine energy. And that's what I love about what we're doing.
And the less we think about that we are healing, the more you can actually channel for a client, right?
Yeah.
Because you widen your vessel.
You're on. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And the channel will be more clear.
Yes.
The less, conditioning, trauma, blockages you have in your own system, the clearer you become. So the more we heal ourselves, the more we'll be connected to that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we could continue forever and ever. And considering that we talked about so many different things, it's interesting how this conversation was a lot about the duality, contrasts. And I think that's one of the essential experiences we go through on Earth. The everything is split in a way so that we may experience the oneness. Because I see also with everything going on in the world, it is also a process of humanity to move towards coming to one. And you can tell, and that's what I had to think about when you talked about media and what news are put out there. We are meant and influenced and driven to a direction to think that everything is split and we're enemies of each other. And I genuinely believe with everything going on around the world, we are moving towards oneness. Because look at Iran. Look at how this affects Afghanistan. Look at how it affects other countries where people all of a sudden rise up. They partially even use the very same chance. And that is what shows me what you see on the news is not the same as what you can feel energetically. So our conversation had this aspect of duality. And while I think about that, I still feel that we are moving towards coming together. Humanity is entering new ties. And
Yeah, I think balancing out the polarities in the energy, like, it's overly geared towards the masculine, like in our patriarchal structure where, all the masculine behaviors are rewarded more and the feminine energies are kind of looked down on and like diminished a little bit. I feel like we're kind of in a period where those things are being, people after COVID, a lot of people have connected more and they are more connected to that sense and to I noticed that a lot around us as well. There's a lot more people that are opening up to that. And I think that societally we're in a sort of wave of balancing out those things. And that's why you see extremities on all the sides. That you see so many topics about gender because everyone's kind of like, where do we stand? What's going on? And not understanding what's actually happening. When you look at the bigger pattern, that's what's happening. We're reconnecting to our core, to the feminine energies, and we're trying to rebalance out how things are structured. And there's so many scandals and tough stuff that came out over the last years that people start to see it more and more and more and more, what the repercussions are of the system that we live in. And I think that's what's coming to the surface now. And I think that's what's rebalancing it. People standing up, against the regime in Iran, and it kind of trickles out of the region and also everywhere else in the world. This is happening, taking place also in a different way. Like the debates about, toxic masculinity and what is gender and all the different gender, all these things, it's all part of the same wave, I believe. It's all part of a pattern shift that we're in, and it's expressed in Iran, it's expressed in that way. Yeah, it's expressed in another way, but it's the same thing.